and that starts the recording. And then
Okay.
if there are attendees, then they'll be admitted now.
Okay.
All right. We have one.
There we go. There's Rennie.
All right, I'm gonna make Rennie a panelist.
Okay. Do you want to elevate committee, other board members? I mean, it's just Susan.
Hi,
Yep. Yes, yes.
sure. And we're waiting, hi, Rennie. We're waiting for Kelly. He said he'd be joining us tonight. Superintendent.
Hi,
McGuire.
everyone.
Ah,
Hi, Rennie. Hello, everyone. I'm just gonna give it a few more minutes before we start.
Cheryl's absent with notice.
Okay, and Rich said he was gonna be joining in late. He has another meeting.
Okay. Did we hear from Keen?
No. Oh, we'll give it till 6:35 and then we'll start.
Okay.
Oh, I see Kelly, let me elevate him. Hmm. Hi, where did, oh, hi Kelly,
Hi, everybody.
welcome. I just want to give it one more minute. I'll start at 6:35. Thanks. Okay, we'll begin. Welcome everyone to the March Schools and Education Committee meeting. My name is Patricia Larry. I'm the chair with Mara Fitzgerald as our vice chair. We have committee members in attendance. Some will be joining in late. I see Matt Metzger. And I know Rich will be joining in later. I see Janine Kiley, our board chair. Mark Diller, our district manager, is joining us. Let me see if anybody from.
Did you say Susan, first vice chair?
Oh, yes, Susan can, yeah, first vice chair, welcome. Okay, and then tonight, I don't see any elected official reps with us. I do see someone from Morton School, PA president, but she wants to just listen for now. The agenda for this evening, a discussion about meeting the needs of migrant students, funding shortfalls for academic and basic needs. Our panelists this evening are Kelly McGuire, Superintendent for District 2, and Rennie Fong of PS 130 Hernando de Soto School. Before we begin, I have some housekeeping rules. Please be respectful to where we're speaking. Do not type derogatory comments in chat. We will keep the Zoom function open as throughout to adhere to the meeting. Attendees will be on mute. Due to time constraint, we may not get to answer all questions. And I will turn this over to Kelly McGuire. I had sent over some questions. Did you get a chance to look at the questions? Well, we wanted to get like data on how many migrant students are in 341, 130, PS 130, and IS 297, Morton School. We asked around, but we didn't get accurate numbers. I know that Rennie's here. I think if you want to chime in, how many are in your school, but okay, go on.
Currently around 55
55.
at PS 130.
Okay. Kelly, and then I know at IS 297 Morton School, the principal, I think, said that she has about 95. And we don't really have accurate numbers from 41 and 3. I think 3 maybe has around 10 the last time I checked. So do you want me to just ask you questions, Kelly, or yeah? Okay.
Sure, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to provide specific numbers in the schools either, but I can definitely comment on the work we're doing. Yeah, I mean, the numbers for Morton sound close to accurate.
Okay, all right. Well, the first one is, how is enrollment for these students identified?
Are you referencing, like, how are they identified specifically in our system, or when we're enrolling a student who is seeking asylum in our country? How is that student differentiated from another student who's enrolling in a school? What specifically are you thinking about there?
Well, how are they assigned to the schools? I mean, how does the DOE assign them to the schools? That's what I'm interested in that. Yeah. And how do they determine what schools get how many and so forth?
Yeah. So generally speaking, kids who are staying in a shelter in New York City, they attend the school for which they are zoned. But also when kids are enrolling in our schools, the enrollment office speaks with them about the various programs that are available in the school. So some of our schools, both in and out of the district, might provide a transitional bilingual program, or they might provide a dual language program. We don't have any of those currently in our district, but those do exist in different districts in the city. And so we try to accommodate parent requests in that way. We also try to accommodate parent requests when they are seeking to have their children attend school with a younger sibling who might be participating in a program, or an extended family member, if participating in a program that is not their own school is more convenient for the family. But the default is the school that is zoned for the shelter. But then again, just like with every other family, we try to accommodate different requests based on programs that might be supportive of kids or might be supportive of the family. And that those criteria obviously are different than some criteria that we think about when enrolling kids who live in New York City or are moving to New York City. So that's generally the way that we go about it.
All right, how is the district office encouraging family engagement?
Yeah, specifically with kids from families seeking asylum.
Yes, yes. Asylum seekers.
Yeah, so we meet regularly with all of the principals and representatives from the schools that are primarily serving kids who are seeking asylum in the country. We get together and we collaborate with different community-based organizations, and principals actually get together. They're each other's best resource. And so they plan out and share practices that they're using to engage families. There's a lot of different engagement sessions that occur when a new shelter opens up. And so a principal that is receiving a new group of students that are seeking asylum might learn about ways in which the school can be helpful in connecting the families with specific resources. But then as time goes on, we plan out and work together to put community engagement practices in place, like we would for every other family, right? Might have a community dinner. We might provide a training for families on a grading system or communication system, like we would in school in general, but we just try to make sure that we're providing that in multiple languages to be supportive of families. The other thing that we've been doing is that we've been partnering with some community-based organizations. Project Rousseau is an organization that has been really helpful and supportive in several of our schools. And Project Rousseau has been providing materials, supports, legal supports for families, after school supports for families. And so they have been a really good partner. And so sometimes what we've done in different schools is learn about the different resources that an organization like Project Rousseau or another organization that even works with the Department of Education is putting together. And then we make sure that that is spread across the families in different schools. So it varies a little bit depending on what the objective is, whether it's something that's school-based or whether we're trying to provide families with more of a community-based resource. But really this weekly hub that we have with all of the principals or representatives from the schools that are serving families with large numbers of asylum seekers has been really the best resource in putting together different ways that we've been engaging families.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna punt over to Rennie. Rennie, could you give us, based on what we've heard from Kelly, how is your process with asylum seeking students occurring in PS 130? How is that transition going?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I appreciate Kelly and the district just because they have that open space. And for us, our new students came in the new year after the December break. So we got them in January. And within a week, because 231 opened up as shelters, especially for families with children, that's when we received about over 50 students in a matter of 2 weeks. And yeah, and that's when it was helpful to have brothers and sisters who had them since the fall, so that open office hours that Kelly created was a great space, for leaders to share with each other how we can best help the families. As Kelly said, they are zoned for PS 130. And so in that span since January, we've had a few families move to either out of state or different shelters. So when that happens, they can choose to stay. Sometimes it's too hard for the families, even though they want to stay, commuting wise, they are not able to. And so we've lost a few students either out of state or to other shelters. Some have stayed at our school, but then we've also had a few new ones since that surge in January.
Okay. Let me see. Has there been any PD for like teachers since you had this influx of asylum seeking students to help the teachers help these students?
I can comment on what we're doing at the district level, but
Okay.
you know, if any is, I don't know if your teachers have I mean, you have consistently and historically had such a large number of English language learners at PS 130, so they might be the real experts. But so there's a couple things. There's a large ENL, there's a large office at Tweed called the Office of Multilingual Learners. And when we first started enrolling large numbers of students from families seeking asylum, we have one English language learner point person who is on our district team. And she's a excellent resource for our teachers, but she's just one person. And so she's been collaborating closely with the Central Office of Multilingual Learners. And they've conducted, I think, 4 different workshop series for teachers around, and you know, in several of these schools that have received large numbers of new students, you know, these are not schools necessarily that have a long history of serving kids who don't speak English with proficiency. And so they had to get caught up quickly. And so they, and, you know, we found a lot of resources within our schools and within our staff that we didn't necessarily have to access in the past, right? There were some teachers who had taught English language learners prior to their current position, so they were able to support their peers. But our district staff member partnering with the central office, they provided several, like I said, series around planning at different grade levels, lower elementary, upper elementary, middle school. And actually she's running another one tomorrow. So that's kind of the number of students that are enrolling in our district has lessened quite a bit in the last couple of months. And so we are trying to continue to provide support to teachers. So our district office has run a couple of workshops just on their own. There's another one all day tomorrow for teachers. We've been partnering with and making sure the UFT and Teachers Union is aware of the workshops that we've been running so that teachers have access to those programs. So yeah, and then, you know, like there's a whole bunch of like technical stuff too, just in terms of making sure that we are properly evaluating our programs in schools, because students are entitled to a certain number of hours of multi-language service or ENL service. So we have another staff member on our team who really deals with academic policy. And so he has been partnering closely with administrators or teachers in schools to make sure that the services that kids are entitled to are being provided. So sometimes that means changing the academic program in the school, moving teachers around who have different licenses to make sure that they are properly serving or that they're serving the kids that they should be serving. So yeah, there's a bunch of different things that are going on, including one-on-one visits and to schools and teachers as well.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Before I continue, I just want to acknowledge Akila Asqui. She's a CB2 schools and ed member who just joined. And the attendee from Council Member Eric Botcher's office is Nicole Barth. And we have another person, her name is Keneally Hernandez from Assembly Member Lee's office, who is joining us as well. I have, with our committee members present, do you have any questions for Kelly or Rennie Fong or Rennie? I should punt back to you, Rennie. Is there anything that coming to the community board, we write resolutions and help bolster your needs for your school. Is there something that we could help bolster to help your school?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, the community board has been awesome at reaching out and asking how they can support us. So we're really grateful for that. I think, yeah, again, the resources from teachers working with each other, I think that's sometimes the greatest PD, right? And as Kelly said, us having ENL teachers at our school, a lot of them aren't Spanish speaking, but we have some staff who are Spanish speakers. So that's been working really great, where everyone just, everyone steps up, and we are really grateful for the community. I see someone from Grace Lee's office is here, and Christopher Marte. They've been really great also at supporting us. I think a lot of times our families, especially our new families, they're looking for services. And so we sometimes wish like there was up to down, whereas we're going down to up to look for these resources, like families in need of city agencies to help them with work opportunities or job placements. That's been a need of the families. After school programs, like Kelly said, we're trying to reach out to CBOs to see, because a lot of the numbers are, and budgets are set. And so how can we get more students served for after school, for these families who need it? Medical, in terms of getting the vaccinations or other things that the children need, that's also been a need to make sure they get their vaccinations, because if they don't, they can then become excluded, so that's one thing we don't want to happen. And we know that's happened from the fall. So we got to learn from our brother and sister schools who went through that, where, you have families sometimes crying because they didn't know, or there was communication. They didn't, maybe they didn't know it was going to be really that the doors are shut, if you don't get the vaccinations and immunizations in on time. So things like that. So that kind of communication. And then just, sometimes you think, 231 used to be a hotel, so we assume, oh, it's a place where they're going to get all the things they need, right, at a hotel, like even personal hygiene, shampoo, soap, deodorant, things like that for the kids and adults. We just assume that they're provided that, but they're not. So again, Marte's office has had that, where people can go over there. We had a drive on Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, where we had 3-day weekend, and our school just opened up a day where we invited all the families in, and people pitched in and donated things. Our parents association stepped up and had something for each and every child to make sure they felt welcome. And just hot meals. I think the thing we don't realize is sometimes the school meal at our school is the best meal they have, especially for the children. And one day, one of our teachers was eating chicken, and the kids, they missed fried chicken. Like, they haven't had that in so long. And at the hotel, the food is just not great. Okay. And so these families sometimes yearn for that hot meal, and or just a home cooked meal, something for them. So that's been some of the needs. And just clothing, we had winter clothing then, right, for that drive, but even shoes for students, having the right size, and for the adults. And then some of them have younger toddlers or babies. So even strollers, diapers, formula, these are things that we've been trying to gather in the community to donate. But yeah, there's so much that we can do. But so appreciating the community board, just finding ways that these families, if they need the resources, and especially translators and translations, how we can help them. The good thing is, a lot of times they're all centralized either at the hotels or shelters. And so a lot of times we'll send people there to try to communicate something, or by word of mouth. Oh, and another thing is cell phones, where a lot of them might have phones from their other country, but the SIM cards and everything don't work. So sometimes they're on WeChat or things like that. but sometimes getting a hold of the families is not easy either because of the communication and them not having, that they have to be on Wi-Fi in order to be contacted sometimes, if they even have the right devices. So that's another thing for the children. We've tried to provide at the school level electronic devices for the students, because that helps with translations and things like that. Sorry, I went off for so long, but.
No, that's good. That was a lot of what we were asking. I mean, what do you need? And it's interesting because, we see that, and this is probably not so different from the previous students that were living in temporary housing, that you are really supporting the whole family, right? Because you can't support the student if you're not also supporting the parents and siblings. And I think that's wonderful. Do you have washing machines at your school? Would that be something that would be helpful? Or
Yeah.
that you even have space for?
Yeah, that the space and all of the I'm just thinking of, that might be hard. But if they had those facilities at their facility, that would be something great for them, right? But yeah, that would be amazing, I think, for some of the students.
Okay. Sorry. Akila,
I'm gonna, Akila, you had your hand up. Did you want to chime in?
Yeah, no, I had a question. All the things that you said are really important for the families. I wondered, because you mentioned quickly, like, some of the medical care issues and families that are new to this country and in these temporary housing facilities. Do they have a point of service person that helps them get connected to medical care? Do they have a point of service person that helps them also get connected to mental health care, medical care? Like, are those families connected to people who can help them navigate those systems?
I can comment on it a little bit, just some like broadly, and then Rennie, if there's anything that you want to share specific to your school. So, there are a bunch of different agencies that are running and supporting the different shelters. The ones that we've had the best contact with, and I think the ones that have been a real model are when the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene is helping to run the shelter. And so the Row Hotel was one that we visited very early on, and DOHMH was there and running and helping support that. And that was kind of a model situation we felt at the time, in comparison to some of the other challenges that families were having early in the fall around getting all of those different services. So we thought that was pretty great in terms of what it is that we were getting there. There are social workers and small teams working with families in the shelters. There certainly is a strain on the system, and it is and there's also like so many different challenges that are kind of like associated with this. I mean, when you're coming new to a country and you're having to like figure all of these different things out, it's having the background around how things work and how to communicate with different systems and structures, that's all new too. So communication around resources, I know, is a challenge for some of the folks who are working in the shelters. They have some services available, but making sure that families are aware of what's available is also a challenge. So I would, there's a lot of families and there's a lot of needs. And then there are some barriers, like not necessarily having the institutional knowledge and communication. And I don't mean workers who don't speak Spanish. I just mean, families are out trying to get work. Families are out trying to navigate different systems. And so they just need a lot of attempts at trying to, connect with families as well. But when they do, then that's when, things are working well. But I don't know, Rennie, if you have thoughts about your school.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, again, our staff, we have the best nurse, and she's Spanish speaking, so that has helped a lot in building the trust and the relationship. And we have a few teachers on staff who, go above and beyond in the morning, afternoon to try to get the parents when we can, because sometimes it's hard. We know a lot of families are now either not at 231 Grand, some of them, or they're out and about looking for work and other things like that. But yeah, our school nurse does a lot of relaying of information and our school office and trying to outreach to all the families. But yeah, like Christopher Marte, his office, that they'll send someone to 231 Grand just to offer some of the services. But like Kelly said, the ongoing communication is the hardest sometimes, outreaching to everyone and making sure everyone's on the same page.
Thank you, Rennie, for that. Mar?
So Project Open Arms was the program Project Open Arms, I think it was called, was the program that was supposed to address these needs like when people first came. And I don't know if that's still in effect, but according to the literature, it's very specific, right? There's support with, it starts with the interagency collaboration, and it's DYCD and the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs and the DOE and HRA and OPT. But what I'm hearing is that maybe that's not as aligned as it is as they've structured it, and also that money comes in as needed. Has that happened? Has funding rolled in? Like if you made a request, we need this much money for something, does it come in?
Yeah, I mean, so the schools that have received and enrolled new students from families seeking asylum, they have gotten funding that as dictated in Project Open Arms. And so that has been of huge benefit to our schools. And, our budget office at the Department of Education has been very responsive to that. I think that, a couple things that I think, we don't necessarily aren't necessarily up to date on all of the different aspects of, life for our new families living in shelters. And, Rennie is, he has a lot of individual stories from families and their experience there. So he's very aware. We have been trying to encourage partnerships between shelters and schools so that school leaders can go and visit the shelters and learn about the different systems and structures and resources that are available to families there. I think that, when we first were receiving kids in the fall, families were, this was very early on, and, families were really just like showing up with, a plastic bag and, not a ton of resources whatsoever. And so when we've been able to partner a school with a shelter and they can go and they can learn about what's happening, then the people at the school become a little bit more aware of the resources that are there. Otherwise, it feels like who is going to meet the needs of the children and families. It felt like a very overwhelming task, and still is a very overwhelming task for everybody, for sure. But I do think that the more partnership that we can have with the shelters and the community-based organizations, and we can get a little bit better understanding of what life is like after kids leave and go home.
Thank you, Kelly. Janine?
I just want to ask, is the money you got from Project Open Arms, is that equivalent to what you would have gotten with Fair Student funding on a per student basis, or is it less?
It's an additional allocation that is specifically for students who arrive through Project Open Arms.
But for schools like like PS 130 where the kids came in January. Does PS 130, are they getting additional funding for those 50 plus kids?
Yes,
are-
thanks for
Yeah.
asking, Janine. Yeah, we again, like Kelly said, our HR director has been awesome in advocating and asking for the funds. So we did get it end of February, early March, but the funding did come. So we were very grateful for that, so that we can, provide additional personnel or extra help. And yeah, where teachers can also have some planning time also. So that was very, very helpful. Thanks for asking.
And are all the other District 2 schools getting that money on a retroactive basis?
Yep,
Yeah.
they are.
Fantastic. Okay.
Rennie's school, I think, was one of the, I think your school was one of like the final ones to receive. I mean, because that was a new shelter that opened quite late. So other schools might have received it a little bit earlier, but they knew that it was coming down the line, so they could begin programs and supports knowing that this funding was coming.
Yeah, Kelly was mentioning one other thing, like the stories the children are telling. And I wish I was a Spanish speaking, native language, Spanish speaking, but yeah, one of our retirees, she came back to help out. We're very blessed to have her. And she's been working with the students in small groups sometimes, to just have the children feel welcome. And the stories some of them are telling it is quite unbelievable, where they're going through the jungle, going on boats that sometimes flip over, getting asked for money before you go over the water and then after. And it's a jaguar, a baby jaguar scratching one of the children, and then the mama jaguar being nearby is like, OMG, like the trauma that these students are coming in with, and they still have joy on their face, but all that behind the scenes that that's going to surface eventually, right? And things like that. And it reminds me of 9/11, when we went through trauma and we had agencies come in to help out children who, were really affected by this, where they're able to tell their stories. And I think that's so important for children to have that space and to feel safe and, to feel heard. So that's one thing we would love to push for, mental health or some kind of service where what can we do even more for the children?
Are the families getting mental health services, the parents?
I've heard of some groups that are being run in shelters, but I can't say that I know for sure. I haven't heard too many different examples of mental health services for families. Some, but I haven't heard of everything that's going on.
Okay. Thank you, Rennie and Kelly. Are there any questions from our committee members? I see Keen joined and Rich. Hello. Hi.
I have a question about just language access. Going back to Open Arms, said that they're from the Office of Interpretation. Is that what it is? That there's a 24-hour hotline for these families to be able to use all the time. Has that been effective? Is it always available? How do you get the word out to them that this is a resource? Is it working?
Well, the Office of Translation and Interpretation does have a hotline that is open and available for families. Usually families have been accessing that resource around specific events, like when this is a parent-teacher conference season. And so that's a resource that, our school staff are very familiar with, and we are making available for the families of our newest students. Although I will say in many schools, the schools have taken a little bit different tack with parent-teacher conferences, not in every school, but a lot of schools have had, instead of doing things virtually, have had families come in for events in the school. The best interpretation and translation that we feel like we can provide are those of people who are working directly in the school. And so like Rennie, spoke about one of his staff members who was a Spanish speaker, bilingual person who is retired, but is, coming back to work part-time, I think part-time, right, Rennie? We talked about that. Yeah. I mean, those are the kinds of relationships that a lot of principals have been drawing upon. And it's kind of the best thing, right? Because a phone line is great for some just some bits and pieces of information, but being able to have those relationships with people in the school and to have a person who's a professional in the school who knows the school culture, that's really the ideal. So over the past few months, that's something that I feel very good about, like, that we have been able to add, whether on a part-time or full-time basis, a lot of Spanish-speaking staff in District 2, which is exciting. I mean, we have a few programs now that are developing transitional bilingual programs that are happening in our schools that we've been wanting to get going, but now have to get going. And so we're seeing that both in elementary and in middle schools. So that's that planning has been really exciting.
Thanks, Kelly. And I know this evening we've been talking a lot about Spanish-speaking families, but we've also had a handful, about 5-6 out of the 55 who are Russian-speaking. So that has been a bigger challenge, even more so, finding Russian translations or resources for those families. So that's been also very interesting, because Spanish, sometimes you have more resources, right? But for Russian, we've had very little, and some of them come with a little bit of English, but that's been a challenge too.
Rennie, could you give me, you said how many, what was the percentage of students? You said that.
Oh, it was
That's-
about six students out of the 55 that we've had.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from my committee member? Oh, go ahead, Mar.
I have so many questions. Transportation, OPT. Do we have buses going straight to the temporary housing location to bring the kids to and from school? What time does this happen? And does the bus schedule preclude these students from being able to participate in after school? And is additional after school programming needed to support these kids? I know it's a lot, but I'm just thinking about the whole school day.
Rennie, do you want to talk about 1:30, or do you want to?
Sure.
Yeah,
Be-
I guess you're
because-
close to the shelter, right? That
Exactly, because we're a zone school and we're like literally 3-4 blocks away from Grant. Unless they move out, then we try to get them Metro cards so that they can still come. But yeah, walking distance. But that was a great question, Mar. And your other question was, sorry.
So if at your school, they're not taking buses, which is fine. I think that's great, actually, to be able to walk to school is very lucky. But what about after school, to allow these parents to be able to, seek employment and work a full day? But do you have after school for these students? Do you have capacity for these students to participate in after school?
Great question, Mark. Yeah, that's where we're trying to seek for extra, because we have one CBO who opened up only, they only had 2 spots that opened up. Grace Lee's office trying to connect us so that an interested CBO might be able to provide. But you're right. Yeah, some of these families are having a hard time coming to pick up their children. So sometimes they're waiting. We're waiting. They're in the office, and we're supporting the families as we can. But we've had a baseball lacrosse, but that's only like once or twice a day. We have a ENL class for the younger students, but like all around, it would be awesome if there was a every day kind of after school, like supporting our other immigrant families. That would be awesome.
transportation is certainly a challenge, and we have buses that are in place, serving hundreds of kids that are going back and forth in Chelsea, going west to like PS33 and PS11. I guess maybe not so much PS11. A lot of the kids who attend PS11 live within walking distance, but also kids who are attending PS116 on the east side, PS51. There's a lot of buses that are in place there. And then there are some buses that are in place that are serving kids from families who opted into dual language programs in District 4. And so there are some buses that are running from Midtown to East Harlem. The after-school programs, I would say, is probably like very similar to what Rennie said in terms of it's kind of a mixed bag. In some places, they are serving all of the students that are seeking asylum in their after-school program. In other schools, they're just serving some. So what we are doing right now is, we're in the process of beginning to plan for summer rising. And so we expect to be able to provide a bunch of different programs for kids from families seeking asylum through the Summer Rising program. So we're starting to partner with our CBOs and letting them know that in the afternoon hours, which is the enrichment time, that they should also staff up on their bilingual staff, so that Summer Rising program is a really rich opportunity for kids, both academically and as an enrichment activity.
Kelly, thanks for speaking about summarizing. That's one worry, just from last year, where it was very technology based, right? Where people had to apply online, and at PS130 it closed within a half an hour, and a lot of our new fans won't have that technology to apply. So I'm hoping that they have another route where they can reach out and enroll with translations and everything, because for them to do it online is not going to happen. Just from what we saw last year, it was hard for some of our families also.
There's something in the chat from Michelle Amon. She's saying that we still have not received any transportation aid at PS3. Can you speak to this?
I can't speak specifically about the busing at PS3, but I can check into it.
Okay. And Nicole Bart from Councilmember Botcher's office asked about MetroCard, saying they're getting requests from the parents. But any parents in, hold on, I actually just school. Should in temporary housing should be able to get from their shelter a MetroCard to take their child to and from school. So they are available, and we will send you specific information about how to get that done, Nicole.
I'm going to attendees, if you would want to raise your hand for questions before we go to business session, because I'm mindful of everyone's time here tonight. Michelle Amon, I guess I'll promote you. Hold on. You can speak, Michelle. You have to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for having this panel. It's very informative, and like many other schools, our influx is is pretty great. We are at PS3, and we actually formed a committee, an asylum family committee, to provide many things: clothing, food, support, activities, Christmas presents. it's very overwhelming. We have no transportation. They have no Metro cards. They're in temporary shelters. And the depression, the mental health issues are compiling. And that's becoming a bigger problem at this point because it's a very grave situation. And they walk from Midtown all the way down to the West Village many times. Like today is a rainy day, right? And that brings about huge challenges. Some don't even leave their rooms because it's so difficult. I mean, at this, it's so overwhelming for us as committee members. You know, we've applied for everything. We still haven't gotten Metro cards. We still haven't gotten, you know, there's no bus transportation, which there should be. There are no proper food resources, clothing resources. We've done everything. It's very frustrating, and it's not our school. I know that's alone in this. Who do we turn to? Who has answers? I mean, the families just keep coming and coming and coming. What's happening? It's astounding.
Do you
So
know
yeah.
sorry, do you know how many students you have to date, Michelle, at PS3?
We have 12 families. Some students have left because there were no resources. And I think we were told that some moved to New Jersey. Now they've come back. We're getting prior students now that are coming back. So I think student-wise, I believe we're at, I think 20. We're also helping out a neighboring school. So we're clothing and feeding. We do monthly care packages with essentials for other schools because we can't wait around anymore. So we're just, you know, we've formed a committee and we've gotten a lot of support. People are just donating money, but you know, you get to a point where you can only donate once or twice, and you know, that's it for a family. Right? You know, so I was just in there today doing 16 care packages of beans, rice, rice cookers, tampons, no, not even tampons, pads, essentials, baby supplies. Where can we go for this kind of help? I mean, can somebody else speak to this? What is everyone else doing? These families are coming to us saying that they're hungry.
I think that Kelly wants to take a stab at it.
I mean, I can, you know, we can speak to the issues that are connected to school, and I will definitely connect with the school tomorrow in regard to busing and transportation. You know, families that are new to our city, families that that are seeking asylum. You know, there are some families that have connections in the region. And so, you know, we have heard about families leaving to go and live with extended families in other states. But, you know, sometimes that only can be for a short period of time. So then they do return. So, you know, different families are just are dealing with different things. I think that, you know, thinking about schools, thinking about all of the different great things that are available for students who have historically been in your school, right? Like field trips, programs. Those are the kinds of things that I think that PTAs can be really fantastic with in terms of, you know, continuing to make sure that all kids have access to those types of things, right? If they had, you know, previously gone on a field trip that, you know, cost $20, asking if the PTA is able to raise funds, you know, PTAs can help to support that kind of thing. We've heard all kinds of different stories about PTAs supporting families, but you know, there are other resources and systems that are working at the shelter. So I totally hear what you're saying, Michelle, and I think that that's the feeling that we often get too in the schools, because we're not always sure of like what's happening when families go home. But busing is certainly something that's in the scope of our work, as are activities that kids are a part of. But specifically on the busing, I will check in on that one, because that is a challenge for sure.
And I appreciate your comments. Thank you. And I agree with everything you're saying. But I think before, and I am on the PTA and the board and the asylum committee, so which is why we're getting a lot done in our school. And I see Nicole Barth also commented here that they're trying to get Metro. We've been trying to get Metro cards and transportation since last fall. And they're still not here. So these families are literally walking, or we are garnering funds, private funds from our families to pay for Metro cards, which is, what
Michelle,
we did here.
Might I suggest, since according to Open Arms, there are supposed to be all of these resources in place for these kids. Did you get that document earlier?
We've applied for everything that we've been told we're supposed to be getting. They're not even in proper shelters. They're in temporary still.
Right. So and them being in shelters, they and their parents are eligible for Metro cards. Attending New York City public schools, they are eligible for
Yes.
Metro cards. So I think the key is to know which agency specifically to call and contact.
No, we've done all that. We've done all that.
And well, I think that from
Done
the
all
local electeds offices, they can also try to help. Would you say transportation is the primary right now?
And mental health.
And mental health. And what is
severe? I mean,
so what specifically do you need to address that issue at PS3?
transportation, counseling, translators. They're probably the biggest three. Any kind of support.
All right. So we will advocate for that in our resolution and also follow up with you after this meeting to see how we can help in other ways.
Can I leave my phone number or email, or what's the best way to do this?
Yeah, if you want to DM right now, Patricia or myself, your information, we will record it.
Thank
and
you
we
so
have your
much.
email address when
Yeah, thank you,
absolutely.
Michelle, for coming.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
okay.
I have a question, if I can ask one. I don't know, Patricia.
Oh, go ahead, Akila, because Kelly's only available for about an hour, and I want to be mindful of the time. Yeah.
Just a quick question, Kelly. Are all schools given a comprehensive list of agencies with specific contacts, like names of people to contact, phone numbers, emails for these services that families need? So if there are services outside of, field trips and transportation, because, a child eating, it gets in the way of their learning, right? Lack of eating gets in the way of learning. All of these kinds of things that Michelle is speaking to. Do all schools get a comprehensive list with people, direct contacts that they can reach out to? Is that something given to all the public schools?
So what we do receive is contacts of social workers and directors, shelter directors. That's information that we have. And then those people, we also have an office of, and then those people in the shelters are in charge in part of facilitating different services. Not everything is run, directly through the schools. So when we hear about concerns, either with a specific family or a general need of a group of people, then our schools have been reaching out to the folks in shelters to make sure that the social workers there are aware of various needs, whether they're basic needs or a family is looking to connect with legal services. we don't necessarily have firsthand knowledge of all of the different resources, or not all of the different resources are flowing through us at the schools. But what we do have is good contact information from each of the shelters.
Yeah, thanks, Kakila. That's a great question. That would be an awesome resource to have, like you said, the city agencies, because what our staff has been doing is trying to look for that, right? Like we found out, like some families looking for employment, right? They realize they have to take a test. And in order to pass that test, they have to know English. So some of them are now looking for ENL classes. And those are things that we would love to work with the city. Like, hey, we have a space at school. If the families can come in and do ENL classes, then that's when you really make the connections with the families and can have that circle and, the sharing, and then provide them with all the resources. Because right now it's just like finding out where to get resources and things like that. We have a relationship also with NYU, where we have NYU Dental, and we've been able to bring parents in, and get student service even for dental hygiene. So, that all of these things, it would be great to, like, where can we go? Because like Kelly said, we rely on each other, but if there was one master list of, who in the city can we go to? That would be amazing, because we've been going to Grace Lee's office or Christopher Marte's office and just, shooting emails out. But if there was one central piece like that, that would be awesome.
I mean, I would think someone to put together, like you said, all the agencies with direct contacts, have a handbook. I mean, at this point, right in the game, we should have a handbook, for a family who's new to New York. Here are, language, you can, categorize it, medical needs, language, employment needs for families, so that schools at least have something to start with, instead of having every school reinventing the wheel. There really should be like a comprehensive approach. Since all these agencies exist, we just have to put them in one place for schools to access them.
Yeah, and I know that, PS 130 is the shelter in Chinatown is relatively new. And so there may be some systems and structures getting going there. But, I think what we really should be moving toward is we have to make sure to handle what is in our work scope the best that we can. And we have to make sure to know who that person is at the shelter that we can connect families to when they need other resources. Because, like I said, not everything flows through the schools. And, we'll be experts in what we're experts in, and they'll be, experts in what they're experts in.
Okay, this is like the last round for questions before we go to business session, because I want to be mindful that we only have Rennie and Kelly for an hour. Are there any other questions from our committee members? No. Attendee? I don't see any. We got some good information tonight that will inform our resolution. Do you have any last comment, Rennie or Kelly, before we head into business session? In business session, you're invited to stay, but you cannot speak. So this is your opportunity to say something else before we head into business session.
Rennie, do you want to go first, or?
Sure. I just always thankful for the community board creating a space, just to be curious and asking the questions and how we can all support one another. And thank you for thinking of us and our, new families, because we're all on the same page where we want to do the most that we can and do right by our children the most, right? Especially our new children. So thank you so much for just having a space where we can talk and learn from each other always.
Yeah, I'm appreciative too. I just like a quick little anecdote is some of our schools have been serving and supporting kids and families since October. And then some are, just in the past couple of weeks or months. And, what I think that in working with the schools that are, veterans and dealing with this since October, that's the reality that we begin to, work with. But every time a new child and his or her family arrives, every time a new school enrolls more kids, then we have to, kind of go back to what it is that we learned when families were first arriving. And so, yes, we're getting, I think, better at it, but I too am just thankful for your keeping this in the public conversation, because there are, new families each day that are benefiting from the conversation being out there. So I won't stay for the business meeting. My daughter told me that dinner is served, so I'm going to go eat her food. But thank you so much for having us tonight.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Rennie.
Thank you, Kelly.
Take care.
Thank you, Rennie.
Have a good night. Thanks for all your hard work. You guys are always working. So thank you. Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. With that, we're heading into business session, but before I saw one last comment from Corinne, who said that we should also look into, what is it? There's a librarian at 75 Morton who is getting, I guess, a sibling and a brother a library card. And I know that the libraries have Wi-Fi and computers that families should be able to access. So that's probably another resource that the family should also look into and the school should look into. With that, we're going to go into business session. With what we heard tonight, we're considering writing a resolution to help to highlight we've heard tonight. Are there any comments from my committee members? What we should include? Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, do you get a sense that what Michelle was describing was unique to her school, or you think it's more widespread?
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
Well, I think each situation is unique to each school. There are some schools who have had, I don't know, a better time, but a different experience. We heard from Rennie, and it was a very different conversation from what we were hearing from Michelle. So it really depends on the school. It depends on the number of students. I mean, Rennie, PS 130 has many more asylum-seeking students than PS 3. And to hear Michelle tell it, it's very bad with 12 families, and then they even lost some families, and then some came back, and it's crazy. But Rennie had, how many did he say? 50?
Yeah, over 50.
And they're walking to school and they're getting there. And yes, there are some things they could use, but it was much more of a positive conversation, I think, which is interesting because, we know that PS3 is a really well-resourced school, much more than 130. So, it begs the question, why are they having such trouble? And 130, not that they're not having their own issues, but it's interesting.
Can I respond to that? I think that everyone's in their different learning process when it comes to dealing with immigrant families. So I think PS 130 has had historically a larger number of immigrant families and families who are new to New York City. So they may already, and Rennie seems to clearly have systems in place from this kind of experience before and knowledge. In my short time at PS3, I don't remember there being the number of immigrant families as PS 130 has. So I also think that there's a learning curve to how to connect families to the resources that they need. Rennie seemed to really want that kind of comprehensive resource that could help his school do this even better. So that's what I was hearing. And I mean, given this is, I don't know, Rich, I mean, your question of, is it widespread? I mean, given this is New York City, I think that we have a long history of not providing the kinds of services to immigrants that they desperately need. So I would kind of be on the lookout and would want to hear from more schools, really. I wouldn't feel comfortable saying it is or it isn't, maybe getting those schools to report in. But it wouldn't surprise me if it was more widespread. Let me put it that way.
We reached out to all of our schools, and the feedback was not, not what we heard from Michelle. I will say that. But yes, they do. PS 130 has experience with, international students for sure, and immigrant students, and they have a shelter close by. Whereas at PS3, we don't have any shelters here in the village. So there's a commute, there's an automatic commute for these kids. So I do, the transportation thing is huge, because we definitely want these kids in school and in school every day. So yeah, that's huge.
Yes. I'm gonna go to Keen.
Right, I had two things in our resolution. I think Akila has a very good idea of suggesting that there be a resource, because Kelly seemed to say that they knew resources, but the schools, just to link up school to school and to have resources like this dental clinic sounds great. Is it only 130? I mean, the whole thing really could be much better coordinated. We could put that in our resolution. It puzzles me that how do kids get assigned to PS3? Because there are other zone schools closer. Does anybody know how?
I was wondering the same thing. Yeah.
How that works?
That was on the list of questions, Patricia. I was looking at it. Did we even answer that? I know that there is, on that open arms document, there is something that talks about how they are placed, how they're assessed for grade placement specifically.
We can follow up with Kelly on that.
But we'll follow up with specifics, but it was on there, I recall.
I don't think I got to it.
But that
But I
was
know, but if they're commuting if the kids are commuting from Midtown, I'm not sure if there are any CBOs that are helping that shelter. Because that's a different community board. I guess that we would have to look into that as well. There,
Isn't PS 51 in Midtown? And also Ella Baker and a bunch of schools, right?
Right. There are many elementary schools much closer than PS3. So
But
why the PS3? I was interesting that they are. PS11 is closer.
it's probably what they can take at the time. I'm sure. I don't know. I would have to follow up with Kelly, but I think it's a capacity of what each school can take, I think. But I don't want to say that, but I think probably that's the answer.
Yeah, but then obviously the transportation is crucial. I mean, then Metro cards, when they get their assignment to PS3, if that's how it works, they should also get a Metro card in their hand. A
Right.
free student Metro card. There's something wrong in that.
there is something very wrong in that.
Yeah, very wrong. Yes.
Like,
And it sounds like there's a communication problem too.
my kid attends a District 2 school, and we have asylum seeking students, and there's no problem. They get their Metro cards like every other student. It's not an issue. So I wonder why there's an issue at PS3. It seems odd to me. I mean, mind you, the Metro card thing has never been perfect, but why is there such an issue here for just 12 families particularly?
Right. What I also found interesting, Rennie said that there's also Russian students that are at his school, but he can't find translators. And that's another issue.
I had a question about that, actually. If there's any way to connect to services. I mean, there's a very large Russian community in Coney Island. I'm wondering if for those families if there's ways to connect to schools out there and find out what kinds of translation services or, you know, just to see what they do to support Russian speaking families. I mean, we are one city. We should, you know, find a way to get resources from parts of our city that maybe have them. I don't know what that could look like though.
Okay. It looks like PS3 doesn't have enough speaking aides or paras that speak the language of the 12 families, and that's why they're probably having a hard time and suffering. I think, well, Michelle highlighted that, and I'm sure Kelly's gonna look into it, but is there anything else we should also include in this reso besides a comprehensive guide, services?
I mean, I think that we should also go by this document, right? This
These
open arms.
arms.
I mean, it's
Okay.
it has 2 sections on transportation. Students in temporary housing team plus the OPT are supposed to be coordinating with DHS. So there are, according to this, 3 different places that students and their families can get Metro cards. And they're bus eligible until 6th grade automatically. They have to fill out a form, and it says right here that they are ensuring that that staff at the shelters have the familiarity with the busing exemptions form, which is required to arrange transportation, and that they will work with the families to secure yellow bus service. This was all supposed to be done. So I say we just go to this and say, this is what we need, because everything the schools have asked for is already in here. The question is, why hasn't it happened?
Right. Rich, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, second time. Yeah, Michelle mentioned 3 things. She mentioned cards. She mentioned what was services, more generally services, and then
Counselors,
Counselors, right?
Okay. All right. So the 3 were, what were the 3 again? It was
Translators.
translators, right?
Counselors.
Counselors for services, yeah. Are those the right? She went on to other things about food and things like that, but it was.
Yeah, mental health.
Yeah, she said, yeah, with the
Counselors,
counselors.
counselors are for.
Counselors, okay.
And
That's what
according
we're-
to this, there are 2 counselors assigned, 2 social workers assigned specifically to every district welcome center, which would be Kelly's office, right? 333 7th Avenue for District 2. There should be 2 counselors full-time there specifically to help and support asylum-seeking students. So the question is that in place? And if it's not, how are they deployed to the schools? Yeah.
Do we have a total number of asylum seeking students in our district?
No, because it's changing constantly.
Or do we have an estimate? I mean, it increases, right?
It increases and it decreases, and we've asked every single school and we've asked Kelly, and we can't get an answer.
I'm just thinking like Rennie said he had 50, right?
Yeah, over
Was that the
50.
number? And then over 50, and then PS3 has 12,
And 75
maybe
Morton
20.
has
I'm
about,
sorry, 20. How many?
and then Morton 95.
95. I mean, 2 social workers is woefully inadequate for the level of trauma that these children are experiencing. Even if they're fully deployed 100% of their time, they cannot see that many patients. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they can't. So that is like woefully inadequate and really needs to be increased tremendously. There should be 2 in every school. I mean, not 2 in a district. So I would highly recommend saying in a resolution that every school should have assigned social workers. I mean, for these students, but I mean, historically, this is something I think this committee has written on increasing, but this is even more of a reason to really put in place a full district-wide mental health support. We have so many families needing with severe trauma.
Right,
Let's pull language from any of the probably multiple resolutions where we've advocated for mental health supports in schools. So
right,
we have something for that, and we'll tweak it so it's specific to this for sure.
right. And we just did a reso last month on pupil transportation. So is there anything else that we should include? Committee? And I know I have to follow up with Kelly on some questions.
Well, because we are, yes, we deal with schools, but we're a community board, so it seemed like Kelly couldn't speak wholly to basic needs. And we can, and we're hearing that food and hot meals is a concern and needed.
Mhm.
The dental thing is needed, medical is needed. We can
Personal items,
Yeah.
personal
Yes.
care items.
put that on that list. Clothing, food, shelter. So I say we also advocate for that separate from the DOE requests.
Okay,
I mean, we have this document that tells us which agency is tasked with dealing with each of these things. So we target them and say, this agency is supposed to be doing this and this agency is supposed to be doing that. And then do we go to central or do we go to the district office and say, they need a list of resources, you need to put this together.
right,
So targeted.
right. Keen?
Yes, I'm also on the Social Services Committee, and we also talked about this. And Susanna Aaron is very much knows about these kinds of issues, and the committee has made a resolution about all this kind of stuff. So I'm suggesting that you talk to her and maybe they even do a joint resolution or something. I mean, see what they're doing, because all the things that Marge just talked about are also things that social services talked about, and specifically with that shelter on Grand Street. But also, I mean, apparently the shelters themselves, if somebody came from the shelter itself, and they're contracted with a whole group of social service workers, and they have somebody at the site that coordinates with the schools. So there should be, again, it seems too scattered, but we don't have to scatter. Right? You can talk to at least Susanna Aaron.
Okay. Thanks for that suggestion, Keen. I guess with that, I want to wrap this session up. All right, guys, so thank you. We'll be working on the reso, I'll share with you. And see you at full board.
Appreciate
right.
it, Patricia. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
for
you.
I
attending.
was late again.
Okay, good night.
Good night.